That's right. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
You can't stop me.
I'm going to win.
It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
I won't quit.
I'll just keep getting stronger.
Stronger?
Stronger.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Jeb, we're not saying barbell research because we might be rebranding, but and maybe we're not. Maybe we're just shitty at this. But we got Stuart Locke, and I'm going to use your name first because Jordan's always the bigwig on all these things. But we got Jordan Swall as well, and we put together this podcast because coincidentally, I think you were just on RX Radio, but we're trying to get you an Instagram following because you're kind of smart and you've got some good world views, and I think the world needs to hear more from you. Jordan, you're kind of already out there, so this isn't for you, just so you know. So welcome.
Fine. I'm a good number two. I'll be the goose to the maverick. I'm fine.
Yeah, and we're all Canadian except for Jeb. So I had we're all friends with Pat Davidson. This is going to be like a great podcast. We're essentially going to talk about powerlifting and the dumb shit powerlifters do. Was kind of like what I had written in there, and I was like, we go a lot of places with this, but first let's start with this. So Stu, let's get you to introduce yourself. I know you got to get good at this. Like you're gonna be doing some podcasts here and there, and like I want to hear your elevator pitch, and then Jordan, you can just say a few things about RX Radio and your app and stuff, and do that thing, and then we'll go into it.
Okay. So my name's Stuart Locke. I'm currently a personal trainer and strength coach in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. My best competition lifts at 255 pounds are a 716 squat and sleeves, 424 bench, and a 716 deadlift.
You always lead with that.
I played university football and rugby, and then that's about it.
Well, no, that's not just it. Okay, you're what do you call it? Kodiak barbell, and
Kodiak
you're
barbell.
bears and arrows. Explain this.
True. Yeah. So, started in 2017. So a very good friend of mine, his name's Dave Tate, started this company called Bears and Arrows. He was in CSOR for 10 years, which is the Canadian Special Operations Regiment. He got out and he was like, oh shit, I have all of this time and I don't know what to do. So he started Bears and Arrows. Pretty shortly after that, we linked up and we do special operations prep coaching. So Dave's actually one of the drill instructors for CSOR prep, so kind of like their Hell Week. And so we do that. And then he's also the person that runs all of the West Coast CPL events.
Oh, yeah.
So he's so he does all of the ones in like Alberta and BC. And so we do prep coaching for powerlifting and special operations selection.
Sweet, that was a way better pitch. I like that one. Jordan, what do you got going on for the people who don't know who you are? We're gonna assume that no one knows you.
That's I base that default assumption that no one knows who I am. Yes, I'm a chiropractor by trade. Strength and conditioning coach, wannabe powerlifter. Own a company called Prescript.com. We sort of specialize in continuing education for clinicians, therapists, personal trainers, and coaches. So that's where I spend a lot of my time is teaching and developing curriculum, either for our in-house education platform or for some of our contracts for commercial gym franchises such as Good Life Fitness and Ultimate Performance. Most of my time is just spent writing now and thinking about lifting weights and writing about lifting weights and then lifting some weights. And I do some one-on-one coaching. Don't do much in the powerlifting space anymore. Do mostly sports, field sports, football, baseball, things like that. That's really it in a nutshell. Just kind of come from like a bit of a clinical background, but always been a bit of a meathead. And through the machine of social media, I've just kind of like, I don't know, I started talking 4 years ago and I haven't shut up, and this is going to be a testament to that. So,
And you got a good name. You got like...
Jordan's
like the muscle doc was like that's not your name. Your muscle doc, like that's a good name right out of the bat.
Oh yeah, dude, that's the inception story of Instagram handles, and it's good and bad, right? Like I have it like on my belt when I train and all that, but like people come up to me and they don't know your real name. It's like I just want to change my driver's license and passport to that because like no one knows what my name is. Like when people like, oh, it's that, I'm like, oh, please don't say
You're the muscle
anything.
doc. You autograph Muscle Doc, or is it like
I don't autograph anything. Who wants my? You want me to deface something you own and make it less valuable with my Instagram handle? Like, no.
That's not real fame, is what you're saying? I always assumed if you're like big on Instagram, like you're the dude now.
No, if I don't know, I don't think I'm doing it right. That might be the case if someone knows how to do it right, but I've just this is all new to me.
Well, this is disappointing. Jeb's really big on Instagram too. He's got 1,500 followers.
Yeah, pretty be considered famous in some circles.
But you got a really good Instagram name. It's Jeb Johnston Stewart.
Stuart Johnston. Why do you fucking do my name wrong every time?
So I have to drop it in every time. Okay, the reason why, and Jeb, I'll let you jump in whenever, but like the reason why I brought you two on is because I figured with two Canadians, you'd have some good banter and some good jokes, but you both powerlift. I don't know who's better at this point. Like in regulation, who's better right now?
We're both
sorry. I cheat and wear wraps, and long ones that are really tight. And so I think Stu is way better at this point now. If I wouldn't be able to touch Stu in a warm-up room.
Well, Stu hasn't competed for like years because he doesn't have a quad tendon.
Hey, I don't have like a pec or half a quad either. So like, don't think.
Exactly.
Well, I don't. So I can say that though. I don't have a knee, a hip, a chest, and I'm like way weaker. But I did lift 700 pounds, Jeb. I gotta insert that in once. And
at one point.
At one point, now I just quit. But I'm wearing hammer strength on video, so like I obviously lift. Okay, let's start here. I think the reason why we want to talk about powerlifting is just because our crowd is actually that OHS crowd. Like initially, that's how our inception came in, is kind of within that strength coach realm of people who like Pat Davidson and all that shit and Ben House. But we also are like lifters at heart. But now with all this new programming stuff coming in and all this 3-letter acronym shit, is that there's this whole idea of like powerlifters are doing stuff wrong. But then on the other end, there's all these strong dudes who are obviously strong and like to lift weights. But then I hear Stu talk and I hear you and all your podcasts saying like, man, some of these dudes are doing shit real stupid. And so I don't know where I want to go with that, Stu. You talked about specificity, but like what's one of the, like, where's one area we can go here that I guess will give people some insight to like what's going on, but then also maybe try to change their mind to do shit better instead of being meatheads, because it doesn't.
I think the biggest issue is like the hyper specificity crowd, and then also like the deeper question is like, why are you lifting weights in the first place, right? So there's a ton of people who are really, really strong and they only do the competition lifts and they look like a fucking melted candle. And you're like, why did you get into this if you're just going to be this like fat, strong blob? Like at some point more fundamentally, you need to be like, okay, like I'm probably not going to be the best in the world. I should probably not be ashamed to take my shirt off in public.
Perfect. I'm glad you like studied this. That was the exact answer I wanted. But like, where does that come from? Is this like an old, because Jeb's from an old school point of view too, but it's just like, where did it go wrong? Like, because like it was cool, like lifting was sweet because dudes just wanted to lift and get strong, and then there's kind of this in-between area now where we're seeing like where it is super hyper specific and they look like wet candles, and at the same time people are really small and not getting stronger, and they're just trying to max out Wilks at like 142 and they don't actually want to get bigger.
Well, I think the issue is that like me and Stu and a lot of guys who are like maybe might represent the more older school, and we watched like the inception of the new school, is we all played, I don't want to say real sports, but I'm going to fucking say real sports because I deal with real athletes. It's like we all played real sports where variables and conditions change 7 times in a second, right? Like especially with rugby, like rugby is probably, in having some peripheral experience in coaching rugby players, like that's, like there's 7 things that can go drastically, catastrophically wrong in like a single play. And you're like, oh, fuck. Now, like your RPE 7 didn't feel like an RPE 7. It's like, dude, it's not like this. So I think people now with the popularity through social media are entering powerlifting as their first sport.
Yeah.
Well, it's also given, I think, rise to people who like fucking are not athletic, right? I mean, all you have to do is like, seriously, like, how many of these guys could fucking jump, you know? I mean, so there was a lot of people that were like, hey, I can do this and compete, and I couldn't ever do anything else.
I actually like that answer completely because I remember that. So I was like a doorman. I don't know. Did all of you guys bounce at one point? I swear. Like,
Yeah.
Jordan's a bouncer, Stu's a bouncer, Jeb. I'm pretty sure you were a bouncer at some point.
I was like
Look at someone who's
145 pounds.
But like
Yeah, I ran nightclubs.
my partner was a powerlifter, like one of the strongest in Canada at the point in single ply, and we got in like I don't want to say we got in an argument, but he's like, I'll fucking like throw you around, and he tried to push me, and I played football in college, and he like literally couldn't move me, and I fucking launched him, and he bench presses like whatever, like 430 in single ply, and I was just like, man, I thought you would be stronger, like. You know what I mean? And like that's the exact thing is like these dudes just go into powerlifting as their first sport, but they never actually learned how to do shit.
Yeah.
And that sets a glass ceiling, I think. I mean, some of the strongest dudes I know have like very, not obscure, but like relatively obscure sports backgrounds. Like I worked with Dan Green for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And he was a male gymnast at the University of Michigan. It's like, go ahead, call that guy a pussy. I fucking dare you. Right. But he can hold like like not only does he know how to manipulate his own body, but he knows how to manipulate other people's bodies. So when you put a bar in his hand, it's like, wait, this person doesn't have this load doesn't have 4 appendages and this constantly deviated center of mass. Like, and I just need to push it from there to there. Like, what a fucking joke. Are you serious? And like,
Ben Pekulski, same thing. He's one of the strongest bodybuilders I've ever met. And he has a background in gymnastics and cheerleading and shit, right? Like he was on the cheerleading squad when Neezy was playing football at Western. So I just think it creates an awareness.
Oh, Jordan, your microphone, you're on your
microphone kicked back on.
Yeah.
Are you good now?
Yeah.
Oh,
there we go.
That was so crazy. Man, you are good at technology. You just switched microphones mid thing.
Blue pill, red pill, man. I live in the matrix. So I think that's like a big part of it is like there's a seemingly low barrier of entry of like acquiring skill of these 3 movements, but to master them, I think it has like a certain prerequisite of like spatial awareness that you super compensate for when you play any other real sport.
How much of it Stu, we had a conversation. You sent me a meme yesterday. I don't even want to like throw the dude on the bus, but like he was like a bigger dude and like he was lifting on Instagram. It was like the worst numbers ever. Not to like shame people for having shitty numbers, but
some pros. Fuck.
I'm not saying his name because I don't actually remember it. But how much of it do you think is like, so like we probably all lifted in an age where like we just went to the gym and lifted. Like we saw a fucking article or some shit in Flex magazine. We're like, oh, I'm going to do that. And you kind of learn how to make mistakes. How much of it is just signing up with a powerlifting coach? And we're talking about specificity, but they do the coaching thing way too early. And then they don't get any experience in anything else. Like how much of it is that? Because you basically said as a shitty coach is what you said. That's why he sucks.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? It's like so much of it comes from the fact that like I came up under actual coaches. Like you played university football at University of Alberta, and like I played at University of Ottawa. And like when you see what an actual coach is like, you know what I mean? Like you see an actual football coach. Like my head coach had been a professional coach for 30 years, and like you see, like you know, he had like multiple PhDs, and then like so for me. A coach is someone who is very, 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 very educated. And then to lift over or like to move over into the powerlifting realm, you see these guys who have like a 1,600 pound total and they're talking about coaching people. And it's like, what the fuck do you know? You know what I mean? And it's just like, there's almost this dichotomy between actual sport coaches and powerlifting sport coaches. And like, there's no reliance on there's some reliance on experiential knowledge, but there's like no reliance on like formal coaching education, which I find really frustrating.
Yeah. And I think to like your original point, all working with a coach versus not working with a coach does is weed out it's attrition. It's like, can you beat your head against the wall doing these 3 movements for long enough, tap out your own potential of your tiny peanut brain before you seek someone? If you can get through that, like, you know, the bullshit on social media and all the bad information that's out there, then you get to a point where you want to have a coach. I think all that does, like, I think most people should have a coach kind of from Jump Street, because I think there's untapped potential that goes unrealized because people just don't have the attrition to go through all the bullshit and try to find like useful, applicable information. But then vetting a coach becomes difficult because of the things Stu says. So by the time, if a coach can get someone who's, has some sort of physical competency and has the attrition and the passion to actually get to the point and sift through the bullshit and finally have enough and be like, look, I need someone to synthesize this information and personalize it as much as I need it to be personalized. That's like kind of the perfect storm. But I think a lot of people they'll get a coach just for the name of the coach, right? Like I know people that get clients just because they have followers. Like I want my coach to share me on social media. And like, let's not beat around the bush. That's literally why some people are getting clients, is because they want to get reshared, or these potential clients want to get reshared. And this is a lot coming from that new generation of powerlifters that discovered powerlifting through social media, not as like, you age out in hockey pretty quick. Like I remember being like 18 and going, oh shit, I'm not in the NHL. Now kids in the NHL are younger. Well, all right, I guess I'll go do something else then. That happened really quick. Where then it's like, oh, I found powerlifting. It's like, oh, I can be like competitive and like, yeah, it's not nearly as stressful as like a full spread in a season, and I can just kind of do it on my own terms and still compete and scratch that itch, and that's great. But like, if you didn't have that, and this is your first like kick at the can when it came to sports, like then all of a sudden you're piped into the social media machine. I think that's how a lot of people are making decisions on coaches.
Well, that's actually crazy. I didn't actually think of it in those terms, because it's like the landscape change. Because we'll call it the old guard or old school training and stuff. We didn't have to deal with that shit. Like what you just explained is exhausting to me. I'm like, maybe I should get a coach and go. Like, I'm just gonna try to like do it as like someone with like a beginner's mind. It would be terrifying. Like you would basically go find the dude with the most Instagram following. You're up there. So like you're doing your part for the world, sort of. Like you could probably get more followers. But
it's weird because you have a conversation with the old guard, right? And like, I mean, I've been lucky enough to train with some like old, like Louis and Dave and that. And it's like, you feel bad with them. Like I usually have like a photographer around or a videographer around, but it's like in a business sense, like they get it now, like especially like Dave, like, or even Louis, like when we were at the West Side, my friend had her videographer there. And he was like, kind of like does his Louis thing and just like climbs out from under the bridge that he lives in and like trolls his way around. And then it wasn't until like, but even he started to come around like, look, as much as before the tools were barbells, plates and chains and bands, the tools now are, Zoom H6s, podcasts, DSLR, mirrorless 4K cameras. Like these are the tools you have to compete in a business sense. The hard part is to find like high quality content that's actually shot in high quality, right? Like you guys know Seth Albersworth, right?
Yeah, he was just
he's fucking crazy strong, and his information is so invaluable because as far as like, look, I know a lot of guys with PhDs. I know way more guys with PhDs than I know can stand up with 1,100 pounds on their back, right? So it's like that is like in the hierarchy of education and knowledge, like there's the guys by first name that have 1,100 pounds on their back, right? There's an endless fucking circle jerk of PhDs out there, right? So, but people
all of our guests is like, fuck you, but we only bring on the cool PhDs, FY. Like we have to be down with the shut up, Stu.
I think there's an experiential
life trainer, Stu.
Like, given the level you're trying to ascend to, there has to be a coefficient of knowledge and experience. And some people like nerd out in powerlifting because it's so objective. Like I learned how to powerlift in the Silicon Valley. Every socially awkward Spurgies powerlifter that was in Boss Barbell, like literally the guy who, like, openpowerlifting.org.
Yeah.
Like the sickest database ever. Like I sat next to Sean Stangl in Boss Barbell as he made that website. He would have like the matrix green letters up, and I don't know how the internet works, but like he was making that. But dude, if I had to talk to this guy to like get a spot, I would just send him like a DM across the gym. Like, don't make eye contact with him. Are you serious? Like, but it lends itself to being very like, it's people who are calculated, people who like tangibles, people who like control over variables, like type A types, like powerlifting because it's like you can go percentage based with it and you can do all these fancy equations and bar speed and tendos and all this crap. So it lends itself to finding like people who are very like objective in their nature. And so they make decisions based off those like objective metrics. And one of them could be like social capital.
Which is so strange because like I feel like the people I met, and I mean I went into strongman. I didn't really do much powerlifting, but I got drawn into the world because it was like the people that I would have been in prison with that were doing it. Like it was the opposite end of the spectrum. It's like the guys who like the only reason that they weren't doing time was because they found this sport. And it was like the crazy side of it to me was like the thing. I was like, these guys are fucking nuts. I want to hang out with them on Friday nights and lift.
We're getting less of that though. Like even because it was actually cool. I listened to your podcast with Dave, and like Dave was one of the dudes I listened to growing up. But it's interesting hearing their perspective because it's almost like we need that back. We need them to get 4K cameras. And I know this is like, oh, we're talking about all this shit, but I wish there wasn't an old guard. I wish they would just figure out a little bit. And like Dave has done a pretty good job, but he was talking about like old school stuff, and it was just as applicable now with all the bullshit. And I was like, damn, like where is, like, I want him to have 300,000 followers and be an influencer just so that he could influence like the bullshit. Because it's fucked now. It's not even fucked now. I don't want to say it's fucked now, but it's very hard to like, so I'll bring a dude on like Stu. Stu's like a diamond in the rough, but there's not like, that's not normal to get like a dude with tattoos who likes to live, who wants to talk shit on Instagram with a big following. Like, there's not that many out anymore, but that's what the perception of the sport is what the new people see on social media, which isn't that anymore, but it still is in the trenches. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Not to talk shit about Stu, but like it's harder. It's harder. There's not many muscle docs on with tattoos that are trying to talk good information, but still like lift. It's usually they don't lift is kind of how it works. The more followers you get, the less you.
Yeah, and I think that speaks more to the dilution of the sport than anything, right? It's like Jordan said it best. It's like because of the advent of social media, you have an additional cohort of people who've entered into the sport because that's the first thing that they saw. And because there's this really, really low barrier to entry, but like, you know, Dean, I don't know about you, but like I didn't play university football because I was the most athletically gifted person on my team. I played university football because I was a fucking crazy person. And it's just like, yeah. But the thing is like, those are the people at the end of the day, like the old guard who like, they have all this experiential knowledge because like through and through, they're just crazy people. Like Jordan, he's a little bit more tempered now, but he's still a crazy person. And like, that's really missing. And that's why we're seeing like, you know, 15, 105 kilo third bench press attempts in competition in a row, because these people like don't understand what it actually takes to be strong.
That's part of the reason I don't know, Jeff. This is why we didn't have a podcast name, because we might be rebranding, because I would call that nostalgia or old guard. But like, we're going to probably rebrand as like the pump or some shit, just because like, we want to highlight more people that are like that and just fucking inject them back into society. I know that's like maybe not
because it's like, or at least let it be cool again to like talk like that. Like I feel like some people are like, I feel like you know, the great thing about, you know, bringing up Pat Davidson again is he says like insane shit and then says like really smart shit, but then says something insane and people laugh and they're like, yeah, this is fucking great.
But it's like they needed that. Because like that was normal back, like, you know, like my coach in football, like literally called us all pussies, kicked the garbage can across the room. I can't even say it because I'm like scared I'll get in trouble. And then like we had a weight room. He threw the weight at the garbage can and like got us fired up in halftime because like two guys got like not pass interference, anyways, interference penalties, dumb bullshit, and lost it. It was awesome. And like I remember that moment so vividly, and there's none of that anymore. You know what I mean? Not to say that it all has to be that, but we lost our intensity somewhere along the line in the metrics.
That's a deep ratio of powerlifting, right? That's more like, I mean, to paraphrase a word that I think I've only ever used, Stuart Locke said, people are cogs. Did I use that right? Did I use that right? Can I say exactly? Is that the thing I could say?
I think so. Like it sounded like cocks because you didn't have your good mic on, but like you meant cucks. Yeah. Okay.
But it's just like, I mean, it's a deeper issue outside of powerlifting. You're just seeing it play out in the arena of powerlifting with, the 105 kilo bench press. It's like, Dave Hawkins was the high school wrestling coach at Riverside Secondary. I was 130 pounds at 5'1" in the 9th grade. He like swore at me in the weight room and said he wouldn't allow me to graduate if I still fit in the Nautilus pullover by the time I was grade 12. I was just sitting on this machine in the weight room. Fit in that fucking machine by the time, and this guy's had me up against lockers by the throat. He's kicked me into the deep end of the pool. Like, he went on stress leave because he hung a kid outside of the 2nd-story window by his ankles. Like, this is like, these are the unsung heroes on the front line that are out there making men, right? And we just don't have these beautiful souls anymore who are willing to do that. And like, I'll never forget that. Like, I'll never forget him sitting there going like, look, one day you're going to have a girlfriend and you're going to be walking through an alley and some smackhead's going to roll up on you and you're going to have to handle shit. And it's just like, okay. And by the time I crossed the stage in the 12th grade, I was 220, like fluffy to the gills, but I didn't fit in that fucking pullover anymore.
The smackhead. Did a smackhead ever like find you?
I lived in Windsor. Are you serious? Smackhead. You're like tripping over when you walk outside your front door.
But they didn't fuck with you.
Exactly. Dude, it's the Iron Man. Like, it's better to be feared or respected. It's like, why not be both?
So this like leads to the greater conversation. Like, we can say that, but like, what are the solutions you guys are offering now? Because Jordan, you're easy because it's one of those things where like the stuff you're offering to the lifting world is like, here's how you do shit better. But what does that look like in the sense where you have to, because essentially we have to tell a better story, because we all got brought up on the story of like lifting and tattoos and getting big and getting jacked, and then it kind of turned into sports and lifting and all this other shit. How do you tell because it's going to have to be a different story. What is that story to get them on to smarter shit so they're not doing dumb shit, but also kind of keep that same effort level, or I don't know, nostalgic nature? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is a random question, but
like an olive branch, like it's, I mean, not to like bastardize a term, but you have to definitely be a little bit more Renaissance now. Like, you have to have, like, Stu is the scariest person you'd ever want to run across, like, just by looking at him. Like, people cross the street in Ottawa, especially. People cross, you said diamond in the rough, and I was like, yeah, Ottawa's a pretty shitty place. Yeah, so, like, people cross the street when they see him, but they don't see Stu with like his cats on his Instagram story. It's like, so it's a bit of a renaissance. And I think that's what really draws people in. It's like, yeah, like the old guy were nuts, but think how well that even they, given like the limited mediums that they had to like really highlight what they did. Like, yeah, they were nuts, but you never really got like the voyeuristic view into their lifestyle. Like, you didn't know if they were like that 24/7. Like, yeah, Captain Kirk was a psycho and he'd throw a plate at you if you're at the squat rack. But I'm sure like if you were hanging out with him, he was like a pretty nice guy. Like, I'm sure he'd like put on Bridget Jones's Diary and cry or some shit like that. So it's like, I think in social media, like the way that I approach it is like being a little bit more like transparent. And like, I think that helps people because like, you know, that outer valence of like I got beard and tattoo, that works. And like, we can sit around and train and, you know, rip ammonia and bleed out of our noses and stuff like that. But like, that scares most people away. So if I go, hey, look, like I had a shit ton of like panic attacks a few years ago and I was like in the hospital for anxiety. And it's like, I don't talk about it too often, but someone's like, oh, fuck, like that. And you kind of still are kind of strong and you got your shit together. It's like, yeah, lifting weights definitely helped with that. Come lift weights and learn how to lift weights. So I think it's kind of like using the tools at your like your disposal and like using them in kind of like a transparent manner. Like, because I know people that use the social media thing and it's a different, they become like a caricature of themselves. Like I've been in a room with one dude and he's had he's had some issues like clinically, and you talk to him and he's kind of like a weird dial Tony, like can't look in the eye sort of thing. But he goes on his Instagram story to sell one of his fucking t-shirts. And it's all of a sudden, it's like, oh, you got to feel this fabric, guys. And it's like, whoa, like that wasn't me. That was Patricia kind of shit. It's like, what just happened there? And I think that's where people miss the boat is like on like bringing people in. It's like you just have to be transparent. And I think that's where like Stu, especially like for better or for worse, he's gonna tell you're never wondering what Stu's thinking.
No, and some of the shit like just like so it's interesting because I can't even remember what was the last rant you had on. Was it about barge bench presses? I don't know, but it's like the stuff that you're saying is like stuff that almost needs to get heard in the powerlifting world because it has become not selling t-shirts but selling the best programs, but they're kind of losing kind of that old guard knowledge through. It's almost like a bad game of telephone and we just lost it in terms of some of the basic shit. So maybe we go there. Like, where do you think we start? I don't even know how.
I think most fundamentally it starts with like a respect, and like you have to kind of reestablish, and like I hate to say it because it's not really a fucking sport, but like you have to give it the credit that it's due, and you have to like respect those that come before you. And that was a big thing that I learned from other sports is like you come out of the school or you come out of the school team as a first year, there's guys in fifth year, like if they say jump, you say how high, right? But because everyone's an Instagram coach now, that doesn't happen. And kids don't have they don't understand the concepts of respect, and they don't understand the concepts of like, okay, like maybe just shut your mouth for the first couple of years and like listen to what people are saying, like go to a really strong powerlifting gym, listen to what people are saying, accept critiques, don't think that you know everything, and move from there. Like I'll give you a good example. Like there was a kid and I was benching and he sets up on the bench across from me and he has a fucking bag of McDonald's and it's like 12:30 and he's eating a McDouble on the bench. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? He's like, what? And I was like, why are you eating? You're supposed to be working out. And he's like, well, like I stayed up late last night and like I didn't have any food before coming to the gym. And I was like, go eat it in your fucking car, dude. Like you work out here. But it's like little shit like that where like they think that this is okay because no one's ever told them like, hey, the gym is where you train. The gym is not where you eat your hash brown.
Well, that sounds like even Jeb, like your jiu-jitsu stories. Like you know what I mean? Like if you miss out on those.
I mean, there's a very simple hierarchy there. You're just gonna get your fucking ass beat for 5 years. But I mean, that's the beauty of that. Like it's physical beat. Like there's no question. Someone's balls are in your face for 40 minutes. You're like, yeah, I know who's in charge.
But I think you get it. It's just like I think when you had Seth on, he's talking about was it Dan Bell? Like anyways, he trains with like literally monsters, and like Seth was already strong going into that. So for anyone who doesn't know, like go listen to his podcast on RX Radio. But he basically came up through teams, and now he's at the strongest team. But the people who are kind of like we'll talk about old guard and all this stuff, but learning powerlifting do it by going into a gym where there's lots of powerlifters. They're stronger, and they learn. Like you learn. You don't just learn by going and looking at an ebook online. Like you can. It just I feel like all the strong dudes come out of camps of teams.
It's that apprenticeship versus like trying to you got to earn it. It's like everything.
It's sanctimonious, right? And I think all of us get like the sanctity behind lifting. Like for whatever reason, we found it or it found us. And like if I talk to someone and they're talking about programming, I'm like, okay, do you know who Charles Poliquin is? And I'm getting crickets. It's like, okay, but I'm not talking to you about programming. Like, do you know who Andre Benoit is? No? Like, okay, I'm not. Like, there's a book called American Prometheus. It's like the autobiography of Robert Oppenheimer. And Oppenheimer started off in like psychology or philosophy or something and wanted to switch over to physics. And it's like he went from like an undergrad and wanted to go into a master's and PhD in physics from like a totally unrelated field. And he went to the advisor of the program and was like, look, this is what I've read. And this guy was like, off the charts smart, like incalculable IQ. And he's like, he got into the program, I think it was at Cal Berkeley, into the physics program just because he read books. And the guy was like, look, even if you haven't read these books, the fact you even know these books exist, proof of concept, you've gone deeper into this field without any formal knowledge than anyone else who's actually in the program you're applying for. So he got in just off that. And it's like, when I think of someone, like how much skin do you have in this game is how deep, and how many of you guys, I mean, Jeff, like forums for finding information. It's like forums for finding information could also be the forum that leads you into the windowless van in the park, right? Like
Outlaws. You ever been on Outlaws? Like that was like kind of, I got introduced through like the multiply world. That's where I started off to football, and it was like Outlaws powerlifting. It's just, that's where you learned about like drug programs and like all the crazy shit all to do. Like I'm not even gonna name names, but everyone put their drug protocols on there, and they would talk shit to each other. But through that, you could like learn about like essentially powerlifting. Like, I learned everything I knew about powerlifting, not just drugs, everything on that website. It was amazing because they also were very angry with each other, which also helps.
You saw the cycles, right? You probably understand why they're so mad.
Because they were all on like 4 grams of gear a week.
Yeah, it would get to the point where the dudes doing the most, they would get made fun of by the dudes not doing the most, but they'd be like, yeah, but you're not willing to die, essentially. Like, fuck you. But like that is helpful. It's like, well, at some point, I'm not willing to go there. So like, I don't want to be on the West Side documentary. No offense, like, but I did at one point. But like, once you kind of get there, I don't know, you got some choices to make, and like that's where it becomes a sport. Because like Stu and I make fun about it, how it's not a sport, but there is deep dark corners of it where like it probably pretty fucking serious.
Well, like here in New York, like the powerlifting scene, I don't really know. Like there's a weird dichotomy because we have a few guys who skyrocket the popularity really fast, but then it's also like there's just a huge like upswell from, I'm guessing, from CrossFit gyms of like just like you said, kind of like the nerdy like tech people that work at Google. But we have like on one hand you got like Oak and Larry Wheels when they were coming up and getting really social media savvy and lifting a shit ton of weight. But then there's just like all these like USAPL meets that are sold out in like a day or two. And I coached a few people and went, and I was like, holy shit, nobody here is going to deadlift over 600 pounds. This is the most boring fucking day I've ever spent in my life. But the USAPL is making tons of money now.
Yeah, but that's like comparing the color run to like the triathlon, the Olympics. You watch it, like watch Eliud Kipchoge run a sub 2 hour marathon or sub whatever it is. Like he was running 26 consecutive 4:36 miles. And then, it is at the end of the day, a guy running extremely fast for an extremely long period of time. But it's, again, now we have a lower barrier of entry. People are like doing powerlifting meets, and for better or for worse, like it's kind of good to get exposure to the sport. Mm-hmm. We filter people up this ladder of like actually finding it a sanctimonious thing. But some people are doing them because the barrier of entry is low, in the same like, oh, I want to train for something. I want to do a 5K. It's like, all right. And then on the other end of that, there's, people play flag football on weekends, but no one thinks that they're going to be behind center, at Lambeau, right? Like,
so where's that disconnect? Like, why is it that like with powerlifting, people equate that, 300-pound total to like the same thing, whereas no one in football, like you said, playing flag football counts. Like they're not like, oh, I'm pretty much, Brett Favre now.
Social media. That's because if we're not on ESPN, we don't have a year of like, there's no like, Sports Center in the morning, like, and it's to a point where conventional sports are almost unwatchable because there's so much like reputable analysis and like all that behind it. But I think social media really levels the playing field.
That's a really, really good point. I've never actually thought about that. That's crazy.
Well, that's honestly like, so, and this is where it was kind of, I was pumped you had Seth on it, and then I found out you had Stu on, was because it was almost like you're doing your part. Like, you know what I mean? Like you have it sounds stupid, but you have a platform, but there are these people out there, and it's like, fuck, like go talk, like tell your messages to the world, because like we're losing.
Well, I mean, I didn't think like the only way to pay it back, like I can't thank Charles Poliquin. I read an article Poliquin wrote fucking 15 years ago, and I don't think I've front squatted more than 6 reps since. Like, that's influence. You want to talk influence? Like, that's fucking influence. Like, I've gone through a decade of school. I've lived with the best in the world, and I still think, like, Stu, whose shirt are you wearing right now? What shirt is that? 100%. Right? So that's Nat Galloway, who's a powerlifter in Ottawa, it's not a question of, hey, I wonder if Nat's killed people. It's, hey, I wonder how many people Nat's killed. right? Like, that's got to be it. Like, you got to pull, like, you know, do what you can for those that are, like, you know, you think are doing a good job. So, like, Stu is in the same position. Like, he's repping someone that is starting to, like, you know, Nat's a smart kid. He's got more experience in a field than anyone would ever want to have, in my opinion. And I think that's part of it, right? Rather than sitting around and, like, you know, trying to be like, oh, this person has like a ton of followers, I'm going to get them on the podcast and then they're going to share it and then the podcast is going to grow. Like, that's everyone's, like, mindset behind growing podcasts or, like, growing their social media platform. And there's a distinct benefit to that if you have value in bringing that to new audiences. But, like, you know, if you rep Nat Galloway, like, Nat Galloway's 6 closest friends are going to be stoked, and then they're going to listen forever because you're helping them out. And then more people know who Nat is, and more people know who Stu is, right? And more people know who Dean and Jeb are, right? Like, I think if like, when you put the people first and, like, content of character over quality content, I think you end up just in a way better place with way cooler people.
We've definitely found that. Like, we found that, like a lot of people are kind of lambasted on social media, or media in general, people that, like, you know, a lot of people shit on. We've been like, dude, this guy is the most stand-up motherfucking, like, I don't care what other people say about him, but, like, you know, we did this, and they, you know, like, went out of their way, like, things that they didn't have to do to just help us out or do things for us. And we're like, what? It doesn't benefit them at all. And to me, like, that's the shit that I like about this, is you, like, see, okay, this is people's true colors, and you can see them pretty quick. Whereas social media, a lot of it gets, you know, kind of obfuscated.
As we just make fun of Stu, basically, like, what man, like, you need to get some sponsored ads with underwear on. And, like, I've seen your 6-pack. Like, you've tried a bit. Let's do this. I don't get that much. Like, Stu basically just makes fun of me constantly on Instagram in DM.
It's so
like,
easy.
Yeah, like, completely. I know that. Like, they're just qualified 95 pounds.
Can I ask Stu a question then, like an actual question? So where do you see the parallels in coaching for special ops guys and powerlifters?
So it's really funny. So with SOF guys, like, typically you have guys going into CSOR or GTF or whatever specialized unit from infantry, right? And so they're called infantards for a reason. Like, they'll do whatever you tell them. Like, if you're like, all right, you're going to get up every morning and you're going to stand on your head in the corner and you're going to jerk off in your own mouth. They're like, yep, okay. And, like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Whereas with powerlifting, you typically have people who, like, will, like, talk back and, like, question a bit more, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that.
That's really, I don't want to do that in the corner. Like, that's weird.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, it's funny. The people who end up being the most successful in powerlifting are the one who embody the characteristics of the guys who are most successful in, like, prep coaching, right? So, for instance, Nat, like, over the course of when I started working with Nat, his best competition squat, or it wasn't even a competition, his 1 rep max was 315. And then, like, I don't know, 9 months later, he squatted 500 for 5.
Yeah.
But it's because it was like, I would give him the hardest, shittiest workouts of all time. And because, like, there's no, like, oh, can I do this? It's like, okay, well, like, I'm going to sit here for 4.5 hours until it gets fucking done. He was able to do that. But because people don't have, like, the strength of character to be able to do stuff like that, they don't oftentimes find success that they want just generally in life.
Yeah, my brother's a Green Beret, and that's one of the things we talk about. I'm like, how do you make through selection course and things like that? He's like, I just figure they're not going to kill me. And, like, that's literally the barrier. That's where they think, they're like, yeah, as long as I don't die, like, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
That's why powerlifting, like, that's why it's, like, easy when you kind of compare that to powerlifting. It's not that bad. Like,
yeah.
Except for, like, I still don't want to go on my head in the corner and jerk off in my mouth. Like, I wouldn't do it. Like, I hope that's not in your programs.
Sometimes. It's only in very specialized programs for the best people. But I think it's also one of those things where it's like you'd have to have like whatever you do, like you have to be fucking all in with. And I think that's something that's also lost in powerlifting, right? So because there's such a low barrier to entry, you have people who like they'll try it for 3 months and they're like, I'm not very good at this, and then they'll just fucking quit, or they'll do one meet and they quit. And that's why we see this inundation of like really, really, really bad lifters because they don't actually give a shit. And then you have all these coaches who are willing to take their money because they realize like it's trendy to have a coach. And then you have a bunch of coaches coaching a bunch of lifters with 1,100 pound totals. And then you have this like dilution of bullshit. Like, have you ever seen that South Park episode with like the human centipede?
Yeah, obviously.
That's it. That's all they're doing, right? It's like you have the coach at the front and the lifters behind them, and then the lifters become coaches.
Okay, I mean, it is the progression, and then they become business coaches now.
This is actually a good segue. So like, you actually get someone who actually wants to fucking do something.
Yeah.
As a coach, and I've heard Jordan talk on this a lot in terms of like programming. What are some things that you can do so you don't fuck that person up? Because it's like cool to get that person, but we also know kind of with this coach at the iPad that's connected to shit peed. They're also like really shitty at coaching, and they get someone and they just do dumb shit with them. So like, I guess what are some main things to kind of stay away from with those people, because you can get a lot out of them, but just through programming poorly, you're going to ruin them. Just because they'll try hard, they'll go through a brick wall for you. But
exactly. So I think the big thing, and that comes up as a very good example, is that we picked the most underloaded variation possible for him, right? So something that like, even if he gets really, really strong at, it's still only going to be like 300 pounds, right? So it's like, all right, you're going to find your top set of 8 high bar beltless 3-second eccentric 2-count pause. Okay. Try to load that. Like, you can go as heavy as you fucking want. Try to load that. And then it's just like, oh, you know, at some points you got to realize, like with those guys, because they want to let it out, you have to give them a little bit every once in a while. So it's like, you know, maybe during a deload week, if I'm working out with them, it's like, okay, we're going to hit like a 3 or a 5 rep max today, high bar beltless. Oh, okay. And it's just like, it's about, and Paul, my coach, has the exact same issue with me, is like, you have to stop them from tearing themselves apart by giving them really, really underloaded variations. But then at some points, like, you also have to let them go for it. Otherwise, they're just not going to listen to you doing it anyways.
Well, one thing I heard Jordan talk about too on the other end of that, not necessarily underloading, and I know you've talked about that, but like the amount of internal rotation that people program into powerlifting programs, it just like fucks people up.
Yeah, and I think a big thing too is like you have coaches who don't understand that like at some point, like, you're going to make a really good power lifter and a really bad human, right? It's like, if all of their accessory work is like bilateral sagittal, like, dude, like, eventually their fucking knees are going to hurt, their hips are going to hurt, their back's going to hurt all the time. And like, it's your job as a coach also to look at your program and be like, is this going to allow this person to be at least somewhat functional at 45 years old? And if the answer is no, you should probably fucking change it.
Well, and arguably they could be stronger longer. Like, that's kind of where we're getting at with even like the Pat Davidson stuff and some of the stuff Jordan that you talk about, is like prolonging a lifting career means that they're going to be stronger at the end of the day, which, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, who's making money off this shit? What kind of career is that? Like, you're better off fucking selling pebbles you pick up on the fucking beach. Like, there's no career in powerlifting. There's like, do you want to be big and scary as a dad? Like, or do you want to be like, when the guy comes to pick up your daughter, do you want to answer the door in a wheelchair? Like, those are your, like, that's really the end of your career, right? So like, I think the one thing Stu kind of glassed over, but he talked about it inadvertently, was like, in like vetting coaching is like communication. Like, if I have someone that goes like, oh, only email me and, you know, I'll check in once a week, it's like, all right, see ya. Like, that's, and I was guilty of that when I first started, and I had more clients than I probably should have. But like, he can talk to Nat like face to face, or you can call someone, or they can message him like whenever the fuck they want. So it's like, yeah, I'm a huge fan of like auto-regulating based off exercise selection, like making things subjectively difficult without being objectively heavy. The high bar 3-second eccentric, 2-second pause beltless variations are going to make that very hard without it being very heavy. But like to the other end of that, like what Stu was saying without saying it was like communication is such a huge part of that. Like if you have a coach that's just like it's like Bradley Cooper in Hangover, like school's over, I do not know you, you do not exist. Like on the email check in, fuck you, man. Like, I mean, I work with some, like a very small group of athletes now for this reason, and it's like, you know, it's every day. Like I talk to these dudes every single day. I'm on a call with them for an hour every week, and I'm talking to them, text messaging them cues or considerations and execution of the programming, sometimes mid-lift. So it's like, I think there's two parts of it, because you can write a dumb program, but if you are not a dumb person, you can listen to someone like you just hear the soul leave their voice as you talk to them. Just like, so how'd the session go? Yeah, it's good. What's going on? I've just been sitting in my truck for like 45 minutes, man. Like I can't get out of the car. Like, okay, like, all right, maybe we got to adjust the program there. So I think it's twofold. If you get both of those right, like it's not that. Like I think when I was talking with Dave, he's like, look, if you getting strong is if you can jump up on a sidewalk, you can squat 400 pounds, right? If you just have like a half a brain stem when it comes to programming, and you also have half like an ounce of compassion in your body when you communicate with your clients, like you should be able to figure that out. Like it's not hard.
Well, that's the dude off Instagram. Like, shit you not. It was like a 387 squat or something, and I was like, dude, like I did that at like 19, like, and I didn't even do legs. You just squat it. I don't know. I don't want to make fun of people who aren't like squatting 405, but it's just like, yeah, if you dedicate it for like even like a couple months, you're probably good to go. If you're relatively big. I don't know. It's
well, and that's the other side of the coin. You said relatively big.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to a more fundamental issue, which is like you have people who are obsessed at being relatively strong in very obscure weight classes, right? It's like, I don't give a fuck what the 59 kilo junior world record is, and you shouldn't either, because those are little babies. Okay, you should be looking at like the all-time world record list at 220 and above. Okay, like I just firmly believe in untested powerlifting, there shouldn't be a weight class below 220. It's like if you're below 220, bulk to 220. And I think a big thing that other sports teach you that powerlifting doesn't is that food is good and you should always be growing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like grade 9, 5'4", 150 pounds. When I graduated, 6 foot, 230 pounds. Like, and that was because I was like, okay, well, I'm going to play D-line at university. I'm not very big, so I should eat a lot of food. And I had all these coaches telling me that, eat. But then you have these coaches who have never done it themselves, so they don't actually know what it takes. And they say, okay, we're going to keep you within 6.5 pounds of your competition body weight, and then we'll water cut the day of it. And it's like, shut the fuck up. Okay, the kid's 18 years old. Anything that he inhales is going to turn into muscle. Let him eat.
Well, that is, I don't think it's, maybe it's ruining the sport, but like that mentality is, I don't want to say it's like an eating disorder mentality, but like you just don't get, like you said, in any other sport, you would try to be just the best, period. And it seems like with the weight class powerlifting sports, like they're trying to stay weaker on purpose. And it blows my mind. Like they can do whatever they want, really, but then that's holding the sport back. In terms of, because they're never going to be strong, really. Like they're strong within their weight class, but that's a whole different argument.
But, what's the heaviest you've ever been?
Me?
Stu.
Oh yeah, fuck.
Like 283, 284.
Like, and I don't know if it's coaches holding them back or it's people making decisions off coaches who can hold them back. Like in the way, like I remember being young and like not really knowing how to fight, but being in a situation where I felt like I had to show that I wanted to fight someone. And like my friends were holding me back, but I could have got through. Like, hold me back. And like, no one's really like touching me. I'm just like not advancing forward. And I feel like people self-select for coaches that are going to be fragile with them and not, because honestly, some of like, I've been up around the same, like 285, 290. And like the lifting is the fun part. The eating of the food to get to 200 and maintaining, like having sleep apnea while you're awake is the fucking worst thing. Like, whoa, whoo, like what happened there? So it's like people, I think, whether it's part on the coach, I think part of it has to be on the athlete. Like if your coach is like, if you're okay with someone being like, oh, we're going to stay within 6.5 pounds, like there's plenty of coaches, get a new fucking coach, right? Like I love the elite FTS when they talk about like going to McDonald's.
It's the
like,
fucking greatest thing ever.
Everyone, like that's history. That's like a fucking Smithsonian somewhere. Like that story should be retold in high schools and grade schools across the North America.
That impact.
Like just the idea of putting mayonnaise on a fucking breakfast sandwich.
I remember reading like T Nation back in the day. I don't know if it was like TC Loan or anyways. They were talking about you want to get big, like you're full of shit. Like you want to really get big, go get an extra large pizza. Douse it. I think it was Dave who actually put it on there. Douse it in olive oil and do that. And I was like, damn, like I don't want to do, like I don't want to get that big right now. But like it stuck with me because I was like, yeah, I'm not ready yet. But that's the sort of shit people need to hear. It's like, well, yeah, you can be in a 200 calorie surplus and stuff, but like really you're going to need to eat a fuck more than that. And it's way more than you think, especially once metabolic adaptation sets in. Like you're going to have to eat like 4,000 plus.
I remember not being able to crack 260 in undergrad. And I remember watching that. I would watch in the same way, like you watch like someone, like I used to watch Lee Priest videos before I trained when I was like 17 just to get hype. I used to watch like I used to watch that Dave Tate video talking about like putting mayo on breakfast sandwiches before I remember I like was sick of it. And I walked to the fucking Loblaws or whatever, snowing sideways, uphill both ways, that whole story. And I got on top of my meals, I got 7 Delisio pizzas. They're like, come hell or high fucking water, in 7 days, I'm going to crack 2. I would not let myself go to sleep. And the first couple of days are sweet, right? Like you're eating fucking beef and rice like an asshole for 2 years. And all of a sudden there's this home every night. But the third night, it was like 1:30 in the morning. And I was just like trying to osmosis this slice of pizza into my face. But like 7 days later, I was like 263. I was like, all right, I hate myself, but we made it.
Like, so that's kind of what I want people to hear. Like, and maybe it's just because Jem and I know a lot. Like, one of our biggest gripes, and I don't want to call everyone out, but like in the strength and conditioning realm, is a lot of them are, you can call it the, like you're in the, you know, Pat Davidson, the PRI realm and stuff. Like a lot of these dudes are talking about how to layer this stuff on lifting, and they're not that big. And so it's really, really tough for me to like really buy into some of these systems when they're designed for fragile people. You know what I mean? And now it's finding its way into powerlifting. That's why Prescript is kind of sweet, because you're basically trying to make lifters just better, as opposed to layering systems that don't necessarily work because they need to get the other stuff down. They need to eat the pizza with olive oil, go to get 5 Delisio pizzas, and they need to like kind of train their face off for a while before they start looking at this other shit. They're just end up being fragile and they cap themselves out before they even get started.
Yeah, I think you gotta like, there's a difference between adaptation and optimization, and like a PRI model, a concept of like looking at the body is very much in optimization.
Mm-hmm.
And like, look, from physical performance standpoint, I really think having better tools to adapt is going to be the win long-term, because your optimization is really going to be set by your habits outside of the weight room, right? Whether that's in barbell sports, whether that's in conventional sports, like the kid who's eating McDonald's at noon across from Stu on a bench press, like he can do all his fucking bridge hip lift, 90-90 posterior expansion, bucket handle rib stuff. He's still smashing like a Happy Meal before he benches. Like he's trying to optimize a system where he just needs to have a strategy to know how to adapt, right? Like earn the right to go that deep and be like, oh, if I make this minor fix, like, you know, Stu's level, like he's had his like first rib issues that's fucking up his psoas. And it's like, when people come to me at that with 100-pound or 200-pound bench press, it's like, yeah, have you ever considered the fact you're just weak? Like maybe we don't worry about the rib cage psoas-y thing. Like maybe that only matters like if you're 285 or like 290 solid muscle and you squat like 700 pounds in sleep.
I also think that that's relevant. Like I think that needs to be said a little bit more, because like you said, there's like, that gets lost in it, because a lot of that information does make sense. Like it makes sense for a certain population, but it's just like, if you can't layer that on to your weak body. Like Stu, I remember you saying like PRI helped you when you were fucking, it made you the fastest you ever were, and you kind of went through it in university and stuff. Yeah, but you were 280 pounds and like you had shit, like you had real shit. It wasn't just like fake boo-boos where you could have just did a little less benching and your shoulder will feel better, or just like learn how to move your scapula. Like you know what I mean? Like it's weird because it gets lost. It's like the first place we go to now as coaches is to a lot of these systems, and then if you're not brought up through the system of lifting and getting strong or an athletic background, you miss out on how to actually utilize the tool properly because you only have the one tool.
You're missing the forest for the trees, right? And it's like, it's ultimately it just comes down to like, okay, like, is this kid's bench stuck because like his scapulohumeral rhythm is off, or is this bench stuck because he's eating 2,200 calories a day? Like, and I think Jordan talks about it a lot, which is Occam's razor. It's like the simplest explanation is probably the most correct. And it's like most of the time they suck because they don't work very hard and they don't have conviction of belief. It's like they don't actually want to be that good. That's their fucking problem, right? It's like, it's not these like super complicated ethereal topics. It's that they just kind of suck and they need to not suck so much. They need to trying.
That, I think that's where we delve into like, you know, all the volume arguments. Like the volume argument doesn't fucking matter until you put in some effort. Like, you know, it's like, is it 20 sets versus 30 sets? There's 20 sets or 30 sets of fucking 30%. Like, who gives a shit?
Yeah, your 30 sets aren't real.
And look who's making these arguments, right? Like how many PhDs, like, you know, there's like Lyle McDonald versus Brad Schoenfeld and Lane Norton combined have as much muscle mass as Stu's right torn quad. Like, what are we doing here, fellas? Like, doesn't matter. Like, there's, like, your opinion is moot. You can't even bring that to, like, the adults are speaking. Please, children, like, take your academic shit and, like, go somewhere else. Like, that's the hard part. Like, entering into, like, I see the word evidence-based makes me want to throw up in my mouth. And then spit it into the people of like that say evidence-based, because it's like no, you're science-based, and the research you do is so constrained, for better or for worse. It actually removes the value proposition of what it is you're researching, and like it doesn't apply to, you know, anyone on this call, but you know, some kid with a 12-inch neck and an 1,100-pound total who calls himself a coach can read an abstract or one of fucking Chris Beardsley's infographics, which accurately sums up 43 pages of a research study. Get out of here with this nonsense.
Well, and that's kind of where the direction of this is going. Not because like a lot of these people are like, we have a lot of friends in we'll call the evidence-based community, but like a lot of the ones that we know lift. But then there's this whole thing like you're talking about, and this is kind of a fuck you to the fit pro world, because like they're using Lyle McDonald stuff, and they're like, yeah, but like you said, 11-inch neck, they can't bench 225, and it's like, well, the volume, like, you're not the dude to argue the volume argument because you haven't done the work. We need to hear from the people who are big and the people who are smart. I want them to be big and smart, and if not both of those, like the dude that's big.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, but like when the you know, the 140-pound guy talking about volume comes on Instagram, and then and Dante has a post, you know, he's like, I do one set. And I'm like, yeah, and you're fucking 260 and fucking 8% body fat at like 50.
Oh, this is a rat fest. But like, I guess let's talk about, because we'll wrap this thing up. How is Prescript helping? Like, I actually want to talk about your app, not to push it, but like I think that it's your kind of way as an entry level thing to get people to be smarter, but listen to people who lift. That's my sum of it.
Yeah, I mean, the two major things we focus on are like the level 1 course is kind of like the crown jewel, because it's like you have a curriculum, like developed a curriculum to teach, but there's insidious like between the lines of like teaching people how to think, which is like two totally different things to do. So like trying to teach context and like critical thinking is kind of hard, but I think in the same way, like the guy who's self-limiting and self-sabotaging behavior leaves him to the coach that'll put him in a situation that he'll only stay 6.5 pounds over competition weight. And that's the kind of both on them. I've been lucky so far to like self-select through just the transparent shit I put out on social media and podcasts and stuff for people who are like willing to kind of open up their ears and shut their mouth, because I can mute everyone. Like I literally just like, hey guys, boop, everyone's muted, and I just talk to myself for hours on it. And I just look at faces of people and just go, oh fuck, I lost him there. But everyone I think so far has been pretty good at like, okay, he's like, a lot of the stuff I talk about like doesn't necessarily come from my academic background. It's like I got super lucky and was able to train with people that have like the equivalent of 7 PhDs in the experience field, right? Like guys that compete on the Olympia stage, you know, most of when I trained at Boss Barbell, I remember going in after like, so I would work, like I would do S&C at up at Stanford, and I would go in on Friday night to deadlift. And there's only 5 of us that would train on a Friday night. And of the 5 of us, I was the only one that didn't have a world record. Christy Hawkins owns the 165s. Like she'll be untouched in raw and raw with wraps. Emily, who at the time was the biggest bench presser in the 123. Andrew Herbert, right? Like he's up next for being the next fucking cyborg. And Dan. So it's like a lot of what I've like synthesized is just like being in the room with those guys for 5 years. And then, you know, I went on, like I traveled around the world with Ben Pekulski, who's, you know, you want to talk about coefficient of big and smart, like that guy was it. But in like learning how to learn the stuff they taught me, it was like more important on like the epistemology side of like, how is it that people actually learn? So I think that's like a big part of the course. Like, look, I spent 4 months with these guys, like and girls, like 16 weeks of like me just talking at your face. And a lot of what I'm saying is like, yeah, shoulder, but context. So yeah, hip stability, but context, right? So the idea is like to ask better questions and not like necessarily give them all the answers, which can be super frustrating for a course because most people like, I want a system to follow so I can advocate responsibility if it doesn't work and it be your fault, not mine. And that's like, hey, like I'm fucking, you fuck someone up, it's on your dime. I don't give a shit what you do with the certification, like it's on you. And then the RX programming is like, all right, if you're going to try and prepare for a task that involves the shoulder, the hip, or the spine, this is kind of how, like Stu said, like, you know, you want to make sure these people still can walk. And it's like, all right, if I had to broad brush, like broad spectrum approach, every shoulder, hip, and spine issue that I saw in like clinical practice or in a coaching setting across, I don't know, however many years I've been doing this, what would be my approach on a day-to-day, on a week-to-week, to give some semblance of structure, and how would I implement that on the program? So that's like the other side. So we had a lot of people that do both. And like if you look at Stu's program, like we talked about this on our podcast, he's like, look, I'm going to, like most people have the same technical issues when it comes to adopting these 3 lifts. Like they have an inability to maintain tension in certain positions. So when I'm starting to work with someone novice, I'm going to test their ability to maintain tension in these positions. Right? If we test out of that, we test well, then we start to go in a little bit more personal variance. But like most people's issues, like we want to think that people want to think they're so special. It's like, look, you all got shoulders, hips, and spines. It's like, yeah, we can look at that cadaver study that McGill always cites. And it's like the femur leaves the socket this degree. Look how long that femur neck, like he's not going to be able to squat to death. It's like, then I think of like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park and be like, life finds a way. And it's like magically this Scottish guy is squatting to death. Like based off that study, Nat Galloway should have like a 30-degree above parallel squat, but there he is in the high bar, ass to grass, because he knows how to like actually address his hips properly because he has a coach that's worth a damn. So it's like in the same way that Stu can look at program and be like, all right, human being's a human being, barbell's a barbell, gravity's gravity. Let's knock off the low-hanging fruit here. That's kind of our approach with like preparing for workouts. It's like we all have shoulders, we all have hips, we all have spines. Hips do walkie things, shoulders do shoulder things, spines do like spine things. Like let's just, whatever the task is, let's just make sure those things can do those things and then just go lift weights. So like someone might look at what we do and be like, oh, that's so simple. It's like, yeah, that's the point.
Yeah.
Like the point is to just, oh, I just have to do like this and this and this. And it's like, yeah, that's it. Oh, I just have to pause squat beltless. Like, yeah, no, that's the point. Like it's sophisticated. Like in the thing, like most things that are simple that have some substance to them are just, they're sophisticated. right? Like there's simple, like, okay, this guy is from Ottawa, Ontario. I'm going to talk slow and use like no more than 3 syllables. But then there's like sophisticated that it's like, okay, he can relay something that's actually really complex in a very easy to digest manner. So it's like when you see like Stu's programming, when you see the stuff that we, right, like the best compliment you can get is like, oh, it makes so much sense. Yeah, that's the fucking point. I'm not trying to create some nebulous cloud smoke bomb of it, like information, and I can create a veil of I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing to hide behind. It's like, yeah, it's just reps and sets and exercises and like, oh, like don't sit back or put your knees here when you do this. Like it's not that hard. So that's kind of like, you know, a long answer to a short question, but you know, we kind of try and get both ends of the equation. Like here's all the depth and substance of like what I think you need to know around shoulder, hip, and spine, training muscles in isolation, training movements and integration, training stability, training strength, training for body composition, whatever. And then here's like kind of how you make the shoulder, hip, and spine do shoulder, hip, and spine. So when people see like, oh, I just have to do this, then this, then this, there's 16 weeks of information as to why when we release this one little program, it's like, oh, it's just like 4 exercises. Like, yeah, sure, whatever, just do it.
It's interesting when you talk like that. Like our buddies Kyle Dobbs, and like we make fun of him all the time because his shit's always complicated with the PRI stuff. But he'll get like questions on his Instagram story, like, "What about my I'm in my left hip and then right AFIR and all this stuff." He's like, "Yeah, like we could go there, or you could just like do this one thing and like learn how to do this a little bit better." It's not always that complicated. Yeah, you can learn about DNS and FRC and all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, the best coaches kind of boil it down to the stuff that works. Like he doesn't do a half an hour warm up, even though it looks like it on his Instagram, because he's going to a crowd that he's trying to teach this stuff to. But that's not necessarily what our whole training is about. You know what I mean? You do a good job because your whole, like, you kind of say that straight out. Like that's your motto. You kind of lead with that. Like, yeah, we can do all this crazy shit, but like I also do simple shit too, and it works. Go figure. I don't know. Stu?
Yeah. No, I think it ultimately comes down to if it doesn't have to be complicated, it shouldn't. Right? And so it's like, if we can distill things down into a more simple variant, we should. And that should be like our objective as strength coaches. That should be our people's objective as clinicians. That should be people's objective as personal trainers. It's like, your fucking client doesn't care. They just want results. Just stop trying to impress them with how many multiple syllable words you know, and just give them results. And it's like, it's not actually that hard if you get your fucking head out of your ass.
Well, you asked me the one time, you're like, can you explain like Pat Davidson's the Bill Hartman internal rotation,
Yeah.
rotation thing? I'm like, it'll blow your mind, but like, I'm just gonna give you the base points. I don't want to explain it. Like, you can listen to Pat, but like, it doesn't have, like, it is complicated, but like the parts that are applicable to the people that we deal with, it's very little in that whole spectrum of things.
Mm-hmm.
Even though
it's like, you know, you can listen to like as many Bill Hartman videos as you want, but like ultimately you also need to realize that he's still a physical therapist, and there's going to be a large cohort of people that he works with that are sedentary. And so for them, he might need to get a little into the minutia because they have like weird shit wrong with them. But like most lifters have the same problems. So you're only going to take away like 2 to 3% of what he's saying.
Well, this
that's
is why
only
like,
that's the only thing that's going to apply.
Jordan knows Pat, so it's kind of funny. Like a lot of people that grasp on the Pats, I've had this rant before, but to like see, oh, Pat's doing wedges and we're gonna try to be upright and like do less load and all that stuff. Like Pat, like teaching this shit, but like Pat's a psychopath in the gym. He's like, he like teaches one thing and then like he's like, I don't use half of it. Like it's you can do whatever you want with it, but like I'm going to go lift weights. And I feel like that gets lost sometimes with a dude like Pat, because it's he does get into minutia, but he doesn't live there personally. It's the best. Like you train with him.
Ever seen someone go so ham on a Kaiser?
Man, the first time I met the dude, so like we went to New York. You trained with them in hype. We went to New York and we're just like, hey, we're doing squats. If you want to man up, you're going to do the lift with us. I'm like, okay. And so he goes on to squats, doesn't warm up, doesn't do any of his PRI shit, like literally does nothing. He's like sitting there talking, goes in his first sets with like 450 and it was like 4-second eccentrics, literally gets crushed by 450, like fails. Like he didn't warm up and fails, lifts it up, and then we're like, okay. He's like, yeah, that's it. That's the shit. Like, I'll load it up. and he goes again and hits 2, and I'm just like, dude, I like looked up to you, like what is this? He's just like, yeah, like I'm good, and I'm like, you're not good, you're not gonna get it, you didn't complete any of your sets the whole fucking time. What?
Like down for the PhD on the wall. Like, where the fuck? Where's he? Like, get this from like University of Phoenix online. Where did all that information go?
Like failed. I failed, and then we had to do bench day the next day, and like I failed on like 295 for like 4 incline and like 3 second eccentrics, and I failed. They're like, yeah, we're going one more set. I'm like, no, you said like if you don't hit 4, like I didn't even hit 4. I hit like 2.5. They're like, yeah, you go again. I'm like, this is. But I loved it because it was like kind of like a homage to like what I grew up with. And I was like, okay, I like these dudes, even though they liked me because we did that stuff. But like that's the crazy stuff, is like you see those guys and you learn from them. But a lot of them are brought up through just working hard and being crazy. And then they talk about this stuff, but it's not the stuff. Like that's not all the stuff. It's just a little bit. It's how they make money on some of the things.
That's the intangible, right? Like that's what you should really look to learn from those guys. Is like, yeah, it's all well and good, but that dog's got to hunt, right? Like, you know, Stu on a meat day is like, this guy has had 2 brain cells rubbed together to make a third. Like you just see the blood pressure in the head and be like, there's no way there's cognition going on in there.
No, and you have like a political degree. Like, what's your degree in? Degrees?
So I have a bachelor with specialization in religious studies. So it's like
even better.
We're not talking religions. Why'd you bring that up? We're not.
Yeah.
So so let's do this. So for the people that want to find you, we'll start with Stu. But like, tell them where to find you.
Okay.
It's hard, but.
Yeah, so I'm trying to port everything. Like I finally like made a business Instagram.
So say your Instagram name. I want to.
It's LeQuadzilla is my personal one, and then I'm trying to port everything to Kodiak Barbell, which is easily findable, and then it's kodiakbarbell.com, and that's how people can sign up for coaching for powerlifting or special operations selection prep.
So should they go to Lake Quadzilla or Kodiak Barbell?
Probably Kodiak Barbell, because LeQuadzilla is like still like all of my friends and stuff, and I don't want to get a bunch of people that I don't know aside from on the internet following me.
Did you think it had potential like the Muscle Doc, like it would just take off because of the name?
No, because fuck off.
Sorry, I only get like I'm cutting you off, Jordan. Where's the best place to find what you got going on?
Yeah, Instagram's pretty much it. That and the podcast. So Instagram's at _muscle_doc and podcast. Spotify and iTunes, RXD Radio, RX Radio.
Nice, that's pretty sweet. Okay, yeah. For anyone listening, like again, we brought on these 2 dudes because I knew it was gonna be fun. But like I've been listening to your stuff, Jordan, for a while, so this has been awesome. And Stu, we've been friends a while, and we kind of go back and forth. So I think that honestly. Muscle Doc, go look at his shit, but I think that you're someone that people should be following. If not for your rants, I think for like you actually know shit about powerlifting and religion apparently. So
every now and then Stone Newfie Potato Chef comes out, and it's my favorite. My girlfriend will like, she knows Stu because he's the only story that I actually turn the volume on for. Like I just like let stories play. And I was kind of like, oh, what are we at now? And then I'm like, oh, Stu. And I like go back to it, and then I'll like turn the volume up. So she like hears Stu's voice as much as she hears mine, just because it's so entertaining. But if you can get him to do the Stone Newfie Potato Chef, and I'm from Newfoundland, so that's just, it's like Lucky Charms in the kitchen. It's amazing.
Yeah, I just got an air fryer, so I'll smoke a joint and try to do something tonight.
What the fuck is it? I'm not from Newfoundland. I only they're weird out there.
Hey, no.
Yeah.
Are they weird out there? I'll ask you.
I don't know. Where are you from, Jeb? Where are you from?
I'm from Alberta, so we're.
He's from Edmonton.
Yeah, sure.
I'll admit Edmonton sucks. Like, but it's not Ottawa. Like Ottawa's, you know. Yeah.
What? Okay, Dean. All right, let's not throw names around, okay?
Well, Jordan, you live in Australia right now. Like you clearly.
I'm stuck in Australia right now. I don't necessarily live anywhere. The government won't let my girlfriend leave, so I'm here for the time being.
Oh, because of COVID.
Because the COVID, yeah, man.
Oh shit.
Yeah, the government went straight North Korea. She can't leave.
Are they going to kick you out at some point?
I applied for a visa extension, so I'll be here at least till, well, I can stay here now till December. So
Cool.
just going to hang out, man.
Oh.
Sweet. Okay, take it easy.
Right on, right on.
That's right. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
You can't stop me.
I'm going to win. It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
I won't quit. I'll just keep getting stronger.
Stronger?
Stronger. Stronger.